All right, Jess, can you see my screen? Can everyone see my screen? Cool.
Yep.
I'll jump in. Great to be speaking on this today. This is actually something that I get really excited about. Smartsheet is a wonderful tool that we at DigitalRadius have been working with closely for the past few years. My own background, and here if I can, I'm just going to do a quick agenda. So I'll go into a bit of my background and the company and really dive into these top 10 use cases for Smartsheet within biopharma. And I strongly believe that Smartsheet can solve a lot of the problems we see in the industry that we keep seeing sort of repetitive need for solutions. A lot of email and Excel out there that we'd love to get rid of. All of us are probably tired of running on email and Excel. And especially in this industry where we start a lot of new companies, we grow quickly. We don't necessarily have the capital to invest outside of the clinical assets that we're trying to move forward. And I've been on that side of it, right? I've run IT budgets, built IT teams, and understand the gaps and challenges that we face in this industry, trying to procure solutions and software that meet our needs. So a little bit, just quick background about me. I've run digital teams, in particular enterprise systems for some well-known companies in the industry, both on the asset side with Moderna and the CDMO or support side with Resilience. And I've supported through DigitalRadius now about 30 or 40 other biotech companies and been an advisor to many of them. I've worked on the investment side. I've worked at Science Exchange as a strategy officer there, running their sort of transformation and 2.0 rollout. I've worked very closely with a variety of ERP and big enterprise systems, Workday, SAP, ServiceNow, Viva, over the years. I've come at this really from the angle of, I know the big enterprise stack, built it, have done that work. And now I'm a firm believer that Smartsheet can not only add value if you already have a lot of those tools, but especially for growth companies, replace a lot of those tools, certainly over some time period where it's not yet worth investing in those large COT systems. So our company, DigitalRadius, we are a Smartsheet Platinum partner. We got a new partner of the year last year. We're growing quickly in the space and have become very well known as one of the top, if not the top, healthcare and life sciences ecosystem partner for Smartsheet. And lots of more cool stuff to come. So we've had some great recent hires, continue to expand the platform, and we're the first partner to really take an IP-centric mindset. So we think about this as how do we build solutions that are reusable, and then how do we deploy those solutions at a much lower cost than the labor hours, and it saves a lot of time and effort on both sides because a lot of these problems are repetitive problems that we can take an IP mindset to them. So the team, Jess, you saw earlier, is our COO. She's been with the company basically since the foundation, which was 3.5 years ago when I left Moderna. Chance, an account exec who recently joined from Smartsheet, Scott, Brian, both really top-notch Smartsheet architects and developers who help build ClinSheets, which is one of the tools we'll talk about today, and Ben, Jacob, and Aaliyah, who are all incredibly strong developers. Then we've got a number of other resources as well. So great to have such a strong team. I think we've got some really strong feedback from clients in the last 6 months or since we founded, but certainly the last 6 months in particular, it's been great to watch the growth. All right. And I joke this is the most impressive slide I've got, but we have a strong list of clients. We've worked with quite a few, both large, the big pharma type players, and some that we can't publish here, and then we've worked with a lot of high growth companies as well. Jess, it looks like you just started sharing. Okay.
Yeah, there's some of your screen was cut off, so I'll just take it over from here.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Not sure why. Great. So you want to jump to the next slide. So here's a high-level view of the biopharma landscape, really from an operations perspective. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight here is that quite a few people probably joined today thinking of Smartsheet as a PMO solution, project management or project and portfolio management tool. So as a PPM tool or PMO tool, it's the leading solution. There are others out there. There's Asana, Monday.com, some legacy things like Microsoft Project, or just using One Pager Pro and Microsoft PowerPoint, which I'm overly familiar with. I started as a project manager myself. The benefit here of Smartsheet is sort of, and we'll come into this, we sort of know it as a PMO tool, and it's the most flexible and the most powerful solution for the industry. I would argue, though, that there's a lot more that you can do with Smartsheet than PMO, and that's one of the big things I wanted to focus on today in this presentation, is what are all the other areas that we can talk about that aren't just PMO. And there's a lot to it. So there's a lot of gaps here where we end up, in our industry, we end up using Excel, we end up using PowerPoint, we end up using email as a workflow engine, as an approval mechanism, as a way to get things done. And I would posit here that Smartsheet can solve a lot of those gaps. So here, if we want to dive in, Jess, you want to go to the next slide? So here, top 10. Number one, we firmly believe is clinical PMO. And we've built a branded solution called ClinSheets. ClinSheets is a out-of-the-box clinical PMO tool that includes a wide variety of features that are focused on building clinical PMO solutions. And we believe that Smartsheet is by far and away the best tool for the job here. Clinical PMO is a complicated set of requirements. In our industry, we have a multi-tiered environment: project, program, work breakdown structure, et cetera. Depends exactly how each project or program is set up, and it's split by therapeutic area, trial, et cetera. But what we need to do is build this into a top-down architecture where we can also see, hey, we can drill down, we can do a single source of truth, or we like to say a single sheet of truth for your clinical teams. And it also includes a lot of other features that we often hear are sort of, hey, these are gaps. Intake to approve. So how do I request and approve, including things like DC nomination and approvals, detailed clinical timelines. So how do I drill all the way down into that Gantt chart? And then we've added some other really cool features that I get excited about. We recently added site enrollment tracking, so we can show where sites are at. So that's this new feature on the left, site enrollment. And that can have real-time integration out of, say, a CTMS tool, out of Viva or metadata. And we can pull that in as a nightly or however close to real-time you want to do that. We can pull that in. We can show, hey, this is actually where you are versus where you expect it to be. And this starts to really impact other elements of your, this timeline really becomes a key cornerstone for all these other things that happen in your company. That's anything from top level, hey, investment round, what's our runway, how much capital do we need to get from A to B? And unfortunately, these are hard things to answer, right? I mean, it's hard to know, how many INDs are we going to file next year? How much did it cost us to get from DC nom to IND or to phase 2? These are difficult things to answer. ClinSheets helps build that set of answers. It also helps get everyone on the same page, so that each team, let's say that I've got tech ops or GMP team looking at this, supply chain planning, I can look and say, oh, I know where we are. I know where we are in terms of the clinical trial, the dashboard. I've got a URL that I can go to. Again, I was a PM back in the day. How many times do you answer the question of what's the status, right? Where are we? Well, that becomes a link, right? That becomes a programmatic answer. And then to me, that's really exciting because it really changes sort of how do you answer these questions. And the other is then, okay, how do we start to build out more information within this environment? And on the right is this idea of clinical single source of truth and how do you do the integrations? It's a complex set of integrations if you want to go all the way down that route, but Smartsheet is fully capable of doing it. So you can do an integrated environment with ClinSheets acting as a hub and a solution where you can see all of your data in a single sheet coming in from multiple different systems and sources. So it's well beyond sort of your basic, hey, this is a better version of Microsoft Project. It certainly is that, but there's a lot more that you can do with the platform. I'm just going to take a quick look at Q&A. Okay, sounds good. And to enhance automation capabilities. Yeah, certainly we do. And there's a lot of automation that we've added to ClinSheets. And I'll add that a lot of simple things like notifications and a My Tasks page can really change how people interact with this. So in ClinSheets, we've got role-based access control and visibility. So say your CRO would see only the rows that you want them to see. Potentially you have it set up. We generally do this that most users would only update or edit information through a form or form builder rather than going in to the spreadsheet itself. We really recommend that and build ClinSheets that very few people go into the spreadsheet directly. And we've built a lot of automation around notification, task management, emails, et cetera, so that changes how do people work with this. So if I've got 14 trials in flight, which can certainly happen as a company gets bigger, then I may have tasks across all of them. And that means that then I can go to one place in my tasks list and I can see all of my tasks for clinical. And that's a really important and sort of big game changer in the way that we build this out. Same thing goes for dashboards, single place to go. All right. The second here, and this is one that we've done a lot with in the last year, is R&D tracking. And this goes from really sort of early stage, in vitro type work, but certainly in the in vivo world and any kind of later stage research work, we've seen a lot of demand around, can we bring some of the best practices from clinical PMO without a ton of overhead, without making this too complicated or too much, we don't do duplicate entry. But we know, we were a benchling partner. We know benchling really well. We know the other ELNs really well. My first job at Moderna was implementing IDBS ELN back in 2015. So we kind of know that ecosystem. And we also know what ELNs aren't great at, which is operations management. They're just not built for it, right? They're really good at tracking data within an experiment, or in the case of benchling being sort of a LIMS type platform, but they don't do really well at the operational level. How many experiments am I running? What's their status? Where are they? How long are they going to take? And then certainly even integration to things like budget. How much is it going to cost me? What we've done is built out the same platform that we have with ClinSheets into the R&D world and with some added features. So we've done an assay request in Tracker with an approval. That's been a common request. And we've done a number of other tools here really around this kind of request, approve, track, and display so that you've got that dashboard. And that includes a lot of the tools around role-based access control, the ability to share and create this as a collaborative environment, especially with external counterparties. That can be extremely difficult. You've got a lot of either CROs, CDMOs, collaboration partners, potentially even say a large pharma company or something like that is working with you on these projects. So it can be very difficult in a traditional sense. I've seen SharePoint sites with awful everyone's got access type, hey, let's drop the files in here. We can really change the way that people work using Smartsheet. And I think that's a very strong second use case for Smartsheet. Jess, you could jump forward. Yeah. And then third, and this is a big shift, is that I firmly believe that you can do a lot of manufacturing and quality work in Smartsheet. And I'll talk a little bit about here, there's a dividing line with GMP and non-GMP or GXP, non-GXP. But even on the sort of, hey, we're not going to validate the platform, there's a lot that can be done. And then I'll talk a little bit, we're the first partner to deploy a fully GXP validated solution inside Smartsheet. And that was extremely successful. That was a deviation tracker. We've got a number of others in the works right now. So that was only a few months ago that the first one rolled out. So let's talk a little bit about what are the big problems we typically face. How do I track batches and lots? We're certainly at a higher level. And batch and lot tracking, yes. I mean, I've done this with Emerson Syncade. I've been an SAP partner. I know, Moderna has won awards for this. There was architecture that I built out. There's a lot of work here that can be done in sort of big ERP platforms. There's also a lot of work that can be done and is typically done in Excel. And a lot of that tends to live at the business operations and management level, which is what are we actually looking at? How do I get one pane of glass where I can see status, I can see operations, I can track issues, RAID log, et cetera. And I'm not saying, hey, full QMS. What I'm saying here is, hey, I think we can really build a solution that supplements ERP, MES, QMS systems, potentially integrates with them, pulls data out, isn't necessarily the system of record from an FDA perspective, from a GXP perspective, but not being the system of record still lets you manage it from an operations perspective. So your QMS would still be your QMS, right? Your MES would still be your source of truth around that sort of that detail. But at the higher level, when I want to take that big picture view and I also want to look forward, that's where Smartsheet's exceptional. It's a truly powerful platform. So we've built out a lot of solutions in this space. You can also integrate it with ClinSheets so that I can see oh, actually, you know what? That site enrollment has shifted, and usually, unfortunately, it shifts out to the right. So it's going to take me longer to get everyone enrolled than I expected. The sites aren't, coming up to speed as quickly as I thought. And so therefore, it's going to have an impact on which batches or which lots I'm going to need when. I can see that, right? I can see that in one place. That's incredibly powerful. I've in my past life, I've been part of all these tough decisions, throwing away lots and batches, throwing away huge amounts of raw materials because we got the timelines wrong. Well, the closer that we can get to getting to making that accurate, we can really change that paradigm. All right. So here's a quality control dashboard. So again, would I say, hey, would you build a full QMS? I'd say right now you could actually build a pretty strong lightweight QMS, probably something equivalent to Zen QMS. I'm not going to come in and say, hey, we could build Viva, but you could build something along the lines of a Zen QMS in Smartsheet. And we've actually, I mean, if you look at those screenshots, it's basically there now, and you can validate it. So with those two things combined, yeah, you could build a full QMS here. The bigger use case, though, to me is still that operations level, the business management level. How do I take data, say, out of my QMS and put it somewhere that everyone can look at it, build a dashboard, integrate it with other data sources, and make it operational and useful? And that, I think, is where Smartsheet really shines. And this is an area that Smartsheet typically hasn't been used very much. I think partly because of concerns around GXP and validation 21 CFR. But first, we can speak to that, and I will come up to the validation question. But the other is, I really think that there's a lot here that can live outside of, say, that regulated environment, not as the system of record from a 21 CFR perspective. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this, and it's come up. We've only built this in the last sort of 9 to 12 months. It's been a big new area for us as a partner. My own background is very deeply in this. I've done tons of work on this space, dating back 10 years at this point. So yeah, I love the fact that you can do a lot here with Smartsheet. In this world, often it takes $200,000, $500,000 to do anything. In Smartsheet, you can do a lot of this for 20, 30, 40,000. It's an order of magnitude less expensive than using traditional COT systems, the Emerson Syncades and Verums and PASEX and all that stuff. All right, Jesse, you want to go forward? Yeah, so and fourth here, this is another area that I think has been traditionally underserved. A lot of sort of one-pager pro and Excel timelines is commercial market access and project tracking for commercial. Once a company, we're looking at, hey, how do we get past this clinical phase, get into commercial markets? A lot of big, complex, multi-stakeholder projects, right? There's a lot of people involved in these projects. There's a lot of data that needs to be tracked, understood, disseminated, create a single source of truth. And again, here, what we've built out is role-based access controls, strong platform for collab, including external agencies or other partners. A lot of these, there's collaboration and partners involved, and dashboards and reports to make this much more seamless and get away from that PowerPoint one-pager or Excel type model in terms of how do we understand what are we looking at. I got a question here. Does this integrate with Microsoft Visual Analytics? Yeah, so Smartsheet natively integrates with Microsoft Power BI. And there's a lot that you can do with Microsoft Power Automate and Power BI. We can also integrate with other analytics engines, really anything you want. Smartsheet's got the capabilities to pull data out or bring data in, and it's not really, you're not going to run into a problem there of, hey, I can't get my data out of Smartsheet. The only challenges we've seen are, you've got your typical formatting, extract, transform, load type questions going in and out from a BI perspective into a Tableau or Spotfire or whatever it is you want to use. But there's no real limitations on the Smartsheet side. Instead, then there's a native integration with Microsoft Power BI. So it's and it has a lot of strong analytics capabilities just in Smartsheet. But if you want to do real slice and dice, like, hey, I want to do a real sort of BI analytics type approach, you would typically export to something else. Yeah, so here, just a couple of dashboards, a good view of what we build out. So you've got the project timelines, tracking each of the jobs, and also looking at sort of that marketing home. Like, how do I look at all of my projects, what their status is? And a lot of what we build out in Smartsheet, and what I think Smartsheet's incredibly good at, is giving that big picture view, that single pane of glass. And it's of course extremely helpful with executive teams. How do I show, and this is true across all of the solutions, how do I show an executive team what they want to see, when they want to see it, without having to write that sort of "I'll get back to you" email, right? You can send out the link and they can immediately see what they want to see. Also, it's really helpful for those broader teams, especially when you get involved with it. Smartsheet is by far the most powerful platform I've seen for working across multiple domains. In other words, working across multiple companies. So if I'm working with a CDMO or a CRO or a partner or an agency, in this case, often you'd have a lot of agencies involved, you can do that. And you can do that in a seamless fashion without creating accounts, shipping laptops, giving VPN access, all that awful stuff we've dealt with in the past. So I'm a huge fan of Smartsheet for that. Fifth here is vendor management. Vendor management is a major pain point, and I'll talk all the way from sort of early stage research up through the GMP world and into other areas. A lot of companies either start off with, Prendio, Buyer Procure, or somebody like that, an outsourced partner doing this for them, or eventually end up on a Coupa or an Ariba, which I know very well. I owned Procure to Pay for Moderna. There's a lot of value to those platforms. They're incredibly powerful. What they don't do is really help you deeply with vendor management. You're still largely doing this yourself, and a lot of it is manual. A lot of it is sort of email-based integration. When we request a new vendor, what happens? Or when we want to add a new vendor, what happens? A lot of steps, a lot of teams involved. Usually there's legal, there's workflow, there's contracting, there might be a sourcing or procurement team. There's a lot of different groups involved in this conversation, and it's incredibly inefficient. And because of that, we end up in these issues where we can't get the vendor we want onboarded in any kind of reasonable timeline. We might be adding 3 to 6 months to a project just because we can't get a vendor onboarded. And certainly as you get up into the larger pharma companies, I've seen this and have dealt with this, that is a major challenge. In smaller growth biotech, it's more like, hey, it's the Wild West and we have no real controls in place, right? We don't really know who the vendors are, who approved them, what are they working on. And this crosses over from things like contingent labor management. Hey, we've actually got 4 people showing up from Tallett tomorrow. Who are they? Who do they work for? Where do they sit? How do we know who are they reporting to, et cetera. But also this ties out to a lot of other platforms. So you need to create the vendor in an ERP system. You might have to do a quality review in QMS or in Viva. You might have a contract lifecycle management in Ironclad or something similar where you need to have that MSA signed or CDA in place. All of that is messy, it's manual, and Smartsheet, and we've built out a full solution here. Smartsheet is a fantastic tool to handle this. I would actually, there's no other better platform out there, right? It's a really wonderful way to say, hey, let's look at all of the vendors, and including things like we've got a audit tracker. So yeah, I would still recommend using your QMS or similar, right, in terms of validated all the way up to there's major platforms if you're a large company, but use something like QMS to manage the actual audit itself and documentation. But how about looking at that view of how many vendors do we need to audit next month, next quarter? What's the status on all those audits? That's something that Smartsheet is far better than Viva, far better than any of the QMS tools out there, because it's living that operational level. Yeah, so here's a couple of screenshots. You can look and see we've also got an RFI RFP solution, lightweight, right? This isn't Scout, but it's still a powerful tool if you want to run an RFX. We've got risk assessment and risk management built in, and there's all of the workflow here. So there's a lot of workflow attached to this. And to the earlier question around automation, a ton of automation attached to that workflow, where you can do things like, hey, it's not just check a box. It's actually, we have an update coming out of Ironclad that the CLM was signed, and so we automatically update the status to CLM signed in Smartsheet, right? And you can do a lot of that automation, reduces a ton of manual steps, a lot less chasing people down to try to figure stuff out. And Smartsheet's sort of a set of building blocks, so it's sort of Lego type model. A lot of these tools we reuse across our various solutions. So that's one of the things that, as I said, IP-centric model lets us create a lot of tools that are scalable. We have some very large companies using this solution in particular, because they've constantly faced, even with a Coupa implementation or an Ariba implementation, they've constantly faced issues with vendor management, workflow, and sort of how do I make sure that all of my vendors are being managed in the right way or integrated into the various systems. All right. So there's similarities here to what we see as the number 6, which is worker on and offboarding. I've spent a lot of my career in biotech. We have a ton of people coming and going, either growth companies. You have a lot of contingent labor, a lot of contractors, consultants, and service providers that sometimes don't live in an HR system like a Workday or SuccessFactors. And a lot of smaller growth companies are built on ADP Workforce Now, which is a good payroll solution, but a very limited tool when it comes to worker management. What we've built is a fully integrated onboarding, offboarding tool for worker management. This is an HR question, but it's really a broader ops question than just HR. The reason is, how do we get people on board? And back at Moderna, one of my jobs was, hey, how do we get people operational on day one? What does day one look like? Is day one, hey, I can't get my job done, I'm just going to sit around and wait till I have access? Or is day one, hey, I'm actually adding value to the company? And a good onboarding solution, good automation here can literally change. It's not just that, hey, are they productive for those first few days or first few weeks? It's really setting a tone for the company. We move fast here, right? You want to get rid of that phrase like, oh, just around here, we just move slow, right? You want to kill that off and say, okay, actually around here, we move quickly. We show up, and on day one, I've got access to my systems, my environments, my data. I know what I need, and I know how to get to it. And that really changes the culture. It changes the culture for the each onboarding class. And I think it's extremely important to get that right. So we've built a full onboarding, offboarding solution, can fully integrate with HR, ATS, ERP, payroll, et cetera. And then also a lot of IT backend. What systems access do I need? What roles do I have? And we try to get away from that kind of like, we'll just wing it and see what roles somebody has based on what somebody else has. Really try to automate this. So some dashboards for worker onboarding, showing kind of what's happening and whose tasks are where, what the status is in each of those tasks. And then you can see, I'm actually really proud of this one. If you look at the one on the bottom right, the worker onboarding, the My Team Manager summary, that's what Smartsheet should look like. And I'm just going to call it out here as I think a great example. That's using Work Apps, which is the UI builder on top of Smartsheet. It does not need to look like it does not need to look like Excel. It's not a spreadsheet in terms of how most people would interact with it. It's a modern web interface. It looks great, right? It's clean. I've got a dashboard. I've got everybody's picture. I've got a table-based view. I can see the status. It looks really different from what people are used to with sort of the gray boxes, traditional Smartsheet view. And we use this heavily across our different solutions. And I think it's the future of Smartsheet is how do you build enterprise tools that really look and feel like enterprise solutions in the way that you would build a custom web app, but at literally a fraction, and I mean a tiny fraction of the cost of building this as a custom solution. Because it's pre-built, it's built on Smartsheet. You've got all the upgradability, the compatibility, the security, the data model, all of that is built onto Smartsheet. So you don't have to go out and either write custom code or buy a complicated or expensive COT system that won't necessarily meet your requirements. Smartsheet's a technically specified application. It's a bunch of Lego building blocks that you can build whatever you need. So really, really proud of this one, used in quite a few biotech companies today. And I think it solves a consistent problem, including things like offboarding, where I would, used to be in charge of, for quite a few companies, director and officer, doing that monthly or quarterly review. Hey, should all of these people have access? Well, 20 of them didn't even work for us anymore. That's a major problem, and audit finding is one of the first places auditors like to go these days, if not the first, and it can create a material weakness or a major audit finding if you get that wrong. So this really helps out there as well. All right, number 7, employee training. Training is a really complicated question in our industry. It's not just like, hey, I've got these enterprise-wide company trainings I have to take once a year or when I onboard. We also have all the regulated training. We've got a lot of sort of lab specific or GXP and other clinical training. At times, you might have users in your company with 200, 200 SOPs that they need to sign off on, a lot of read and understand. This can get really complicated. And when it gets really complicated, it gets hard to manage. And usually what ends up happening is it gets split up, where you've got a bunch of different LMS solutions, 2 or 3 often at a minimum, where people are taking trainings in different places. So a couple of really cool things you can do with Smartsheet. One is, hey, okay, let's leave the GXP training in the document management style solution like Viva training, but let's integrate so that we've got a single source of truth around training and can see what the status is of all the training for all of the employees in one place. You can also use Smartsheet to directly manage and deploy trainings. So you can say, all right, well, we want to have an automated and integrated solution which deploys trainings to the workers, and we can do that on worker type, role, location, or other attributes attached to that worker data model or worker data record. That's really cool, right? That's very different than a traditional approach. It's sort of like, hey, it's going to be manually assigned. And this also can improve things like upskilling, or how do you look at getting the most out of and offering the most to your workforce, which can really change your company culture and change how you work with your employees over time. So that kind of skills-based model, we've put our solution head to head with some of the big LMS tools out there, and I would argue that we've won quite a few of those. The Smartsheet comes out feature parity, if not better, than a lot of the big LMS tools. So again, this is what it looks like. It doesn't look like a bunch of gray boxes. It's not a spreadsheet type solution. You can see a continuous improvement dashboard. You can see the trainings assigned to my team or the manager dashboard. This is a very different view than you would get in kind of a spreadsheet type model. Again, clean, modern web user interface. And solves a pretty consistent problem in our industry, which is how do I look at, manage, and understand all of the trainings that are assigned, and how do I try to optimize that too? How do I make that a little bit easier, looking forward maybe and saying, hey, how many trainings are going to be required next month? When does this become effective? You can really help improve workflows and operations by getting ahead of that and by optimizing from this sort of LMS perspective. What are you using? How are you using it? So huge platform play here with Smartsheet, because it can then also integrate, once you've got training, let's say that you're also doing onboarding. Well, great. Like you can just tie those two together. So great example of how this can play off each other. Number 8, there's a lot, and this is probably actually the number 2 current use case, like what we actually see out there in the wild, is financial solutions. And I think it's natural, right? Smartsheet grew up as a spreadsheet tool, and it's very natural for finance teams to use it and say, hey, we're tired of Excel because it doesn't sync and we're all off, it's offline, and we're always trying to make sure everyone's using the right version, all the stuff we hate about Excel. Much as I started my career as an analyst, so I'm very familiar with Excel and love it for certain things, but it's just not built to get teams on the same page or all work together in a collaborative way. And there's a number of really great use cases within the office of the CFO to say, okay, well, what do we want to use Smartsheet for? Because we don't have something today. We're either using Excel today or it's just an offline manual process. So I'll talk to a couple of them. One, we built a savings tracker. So this is a sourcing team to look at, hey, what's our baseline, and then what's our savings year over year or quarter over quarter, and be able to display that. And often there's sort of bonuses or structure attached to that. So that savings tracker is extremely useful for sourcing teams. Accruals, in our industry, there's a ton of service accruals, and in particular, the pain point of clinical trial accruals. And how do you figure out what you actually spent this month versus what you've committed to? And trying to understand, how much that's going to look like, and how do you do this? It's usually a mail merge, right? It's usually a bunch of emails going out with an Excel formatted template, and then somebody, probably an FP&A, has to sit there and try to put it all together. And it really can impact month-end close. It can impact data quality. We've built a solution that could integrate out of something like Coupa or Ariba, or directly out of an ERP, NetSuite, SAP, and then send that out to everyone who needs to do their accruals. They can look at their last month. They can look at what they said, hey, what's the percent complete? They can enter the new percent complete, hit submit, it dramatically speeds up this process. And another is something like invoice aging or procure to pay processing in general. How do you want to characterize outstanding invoices, track overdues, et cetera? A lot of P2P ops backend type work. So a lot of really great use cases here inside finance. And so here's some dashboards. So the accrual dashboard, again, looking at sort of all the different service accruals that need to happen. This would be from the finance or FP&A perspective. Invoice aging, looking at that from an ops P2P perspective, procure to pay perspective, and procurement and sourcing. So you can say, hey, we know where we are versus where we expect it to be on the cost savings, and try and drive cost savings for the business. All right. Ninth here, and this is a big new one, right? This is really different. This didn't exist in the past. Kind of API automation, Coupa. Oh yeah, so yes, there's definitely API integration. Sorry, just jumping back, there was a question on the finance side. May have missed this, but is there API or automation with Coupa and other systems like Adaptive? And Adaptive is the FP&A platform most of the industry uses. Yes, absolutely. So you can integrate, for example, on the invoice tracking, we can do that directly out of Coupa as a system of record. With Adaptive, we can get budget versus actual, or you can like pull budget out of Adaptive, including for things like ClinSheets with the clinical trials tracking. You can do BVA reporting either in Smartsheet or directly in Adaptive. So there's a lot of two-way syncs you can do there. Both of those solutions and all the others are popular tools in the finance space. NetSuite probably being the top of that list, but there's a lot of other tools as well that we can integrate data in either direction. And that means that we can either use, in one case right now, we're building out Smartsheet as a system of record to integrate multiple ERP systems. And that's a really cool concept. So I love that idea, and hopefully we'll be able to do more on that and user story sometime in the future, or customer story. But there's a lot of really interesting things you can do here with Smartsheet to solve problems in the finance space. Multi-ERP backend, multi-P2P systems, international. I ran finance operations at Moderna, and I sort of bumped back and forth between finance and digital over the course of my career. So very comfortable with sort of what do you use in the finance world. I think Smartsheet's a great solution for a lot of those problems. All right. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about validation. We are the first partner to deploy a validated Smartsheet environment, and that lets you do a lot of cool stuff. So right now we started pretty small with a deviation tracker for a phase 1 trial. So as you know, the number of patients there is pretty short, and the client was looking to avoid the cost of buying a COT system, commercial off-the-shelf system, just for that small trial. That said, the whole package went really well, and went through the whole validation process. And I've done a ton of validated deployments of software. What I really love about the way that we can do this in Smartsheet is it's all configuration, right? So you can configure the tool to be what you want it to be, and then validate it. And that means that you don't have to try to sort of shoehorn yourself into somebody else's solution. You can say, all right, well, this is literally what we want. We want this kind of a tracker, and it needs to be validated because our quality team has reviewed, and we believe this is being used for GXP decision making. A lot of things then become possible with Smartsheet if we can validate it. You could go all the way to a full QMS system, and I think actually for some growth biotech, that might be a great solution. There are tools out there that are sort of lighter weight QMS tools, but with Veeva dominating that market. And Veeva is an amazing platform. I'm not taking that away from them by any means, but they're extremely expensive and difficult to work with from a pricing perspective. They're not looking for your business if you're a small biotech these days. They have all the business they need, is sort of their view. And it can be really frustrating. I've helped a lot of clients with those negotiations, but it can be really frustrating. Deviations and AEs, if you want to track, simple tracker, sometimes this is Excel these days, right? Or today. In the future, Smartsheet's a much better solution for this than Excel. Product complaints, again, tracking medical inquiries, similar, spreadsheet type solution. Vendor management, including on the GXP side. And then I actually believe you go all the way to a full GXP change control process. And then you're sort of nipping at ServiceNow's heels on that one. But I'm, again, big fan of ServiceNow, but these days they want about 600,000, 700,000 a year to get started. Maybe you could bring it in on a validated platform for a few $100K, but it's extremely difficult to do that. And so if you want that incident problem change workflow, including a GXP validated change management process, you're looking at a huge cost. Including from the other, there's a lot of other tools out there as well as ServiceNow, but almost always extremely expensive. I believe Smartsheet can step into a lot of those gaps. Growth companies, areas, either spinouts or divestitures, et cetera. Lots of gaps out there, which are currently being filled by Excel, that I think Smartsheet's an amazing solution here now that it can be validated. So yeah, not the most exciting screenshot, but I'm still really excited about the concept that we've done a fully validated 21 CFR compliant deployment. So I'm happy to answer questions on that or any kind of follow up after, because usually this is a pretty sort of deep dive industry specific conversation, but it is really important for certain use cases and effectively required in some parts of the business. So I'm happy to chat about what this could look like in terms of using Smartsheet within a GXP environment. All right, and last up, performance management. So we usually see a lot of growth companies, we see this being run manually or offline, and it's a real pain point or challenge where it's being handled in some kind of Word or Excel template. And with Smartsheet, we've built out, and you can leverage our solution here, a really quite powerful performance management tool. And that includes conversations, tracking, automation, notifications, continuous feedback, and then also at the team level and the ability to look down at my team and say, hey, where are we across the entire team? And a lot of them looking up, hey, I'm executive dashboards, reports, HR business partners. How do I look at this in the bigger picture? Getting away from that Excel and email world. So I think this one is again, it's really powerful. It's something that is today, it's a big pain point, tends to be very manual, especially in a growth company. And I'll say even in larger companies, I know Workday inside out. I've deployed it probably 7 or 8 times at this point. If you like 9-box, then that's your performance management way, the way that you want to do things. Workday is great. If you want to do anything else for performance management, Workday doesn't let you, right? There's no flexibility there. And that's one of the benefits of Smartsheet is it's not going to come in and tell you, hey, this is the way you need to do performance management. It's a Lego building block solution. It lets you do whatever you want. So great example of where Smartsheet offers more flexibility than a lot of the big COT systems. And ask a question here. DigitalRadius has a template set for these use cases. Yes, right? So in each one of these, we have a pre-built template set for each one of these solutions. And that is the approach that we've taken as a partner to try to be something of an irrational competitor here, allowing our clients to leverage the work that's happened so that everyone gets a leg up. We see it as a huge advantage. We've had some great feedback from clients, and the big benefit here is, let's say that you're a growth company, and we all hope this happens. Your lead asset gets great phase 2 data, and you decide, you know what, now we're going to buy SAP, ServiceNow, Workday, and the full Viva suite. And that replaces a lot of the tools that we've stood up for you as a client. I know from experience, having been through this many times myself, what's going to happen is there's another 20, 30, 40 use cases that will then crop up. Commercial, manufacturing, global, market access, all of those will start to become, oh, this never was a problem before, now it's a problem. Now it's something we need to solve. So what tends to happen, in my view as an enterprise architect with Smartsheet, is as the company grows, the use cases change somewhat, but almost, I mean, I would say not almost all the time, the numbers go up, right? So we're happy to provide a lot of the templates as part of our work, because then there's always more to do. It's such a high ROI solution that there's always something else that Smartsheet can be used to automate, integrate, transform a workflow, replace email, replace Excel, kill off a COT system. And I'll give an example. There's some companies now that we're talking to more in the service provider space, like CDMO, CRO space, where we're looking at killing off the full CRM platform. We're looking at order management or integration between ERP systems, stuff that you wouldn't have traditionally thought of Smartsheet as the solution. But there's a lot of great use cases out there. So yeah, we take an IP-based mindset. We try to use and leverage a lot of our IP to give our clients a leg up. All right. So yeah, some cool dashboards looking at the performance management, and your whole worker looking at that worker environment. So then a quick poll here, for everyone. It would be great to get feedback on which are the use cases that you are the most excited about. Would love to get some feedback on that if you've got time to answer that. And then here, let me take a look as well at the Q&A. Feel free to ask any questions. One of the failures of other platforms is the inability to provide tech support. Can you speak to this? Yeah, absolutely. So we provide we have a full support package, and that ranges from, hey, just pick up the phone and burn down against a small bucket of hours, up to let's say that you want to deploy in a mission critical environment. You're using this as an ERP integration to manage orders for GXP manufacturing, or say a CDMO. Then we can do all the way up to a full SLA based model. So if you need to have uptime guarantees, we can do that. And then underneath the hood, Smartsheet also provides support on the application itself. So if there are any issues with Smartsheet, the application, that's where we have a really close partnership with Smartsheet. Obviously, we're the system implementer, they're the software provider, and they do a fantastic job of supporting the software itself. And we also work very closely with the technical team. So if we do ever come across a bug or issue along those lines, we have a direct line into Smartsheet. So that's certainly one that we can hopefully solve for you, so that you don't have to sort of worry about doing it yourself. The same thing there, though, is we're happy to train the trainer. We're happy to build up internal knowledge on Smartsheet, and hand off some admin work to internal teams if that's the right move for your company. There's always that trade-off of headcount and how much headcount do I have and what do I use it for, and we're always happy to do whichever one makes sense. And the last here, deck and recording, yes, this will be available, and we can share that out after the call. So here, the quick poll, answers coming in. A lot of interest in ClinSheets, which makes a lot of sense to me. I think it's the #1 use case today. But hey, it's really cool to see manufacturing and quality coming in second right now, with commercial and market access very high up there as well as R&D tracking. These are great use cases, right? And I firmly believe things like manufacturing and quality, tons of Excel out there that we can kill off, that we can really automate and transform. So I'm excited to see all the feedback here. Any other questions? Price range to solve all 10. Hey, I love it. Let's do all of them. Yeah, so let me talk price range for a second here. There's two components to that. There's pricing from Smartsheet, which is buying the solution, the software solution. Again, while it's a full service enterprise platform, there's two key advantages to Smartsheet when you're buying it. One is it's not priced per app, right? So it's not like it's priced for Smartsheet, the full app, from their sort of the perspective of the software provider. But then how many solutions you use it for is really up to you. So if you want to do 10 solutions, the ROI per solution looks phenomenal, because all of a sudden you're not paying for 10 different tools. You're paying for one tool and using it for 10 different things. Fantastic ROI. The other is the work from us. So, what I like to say is I come from an ERP backend experience. In the SAP world, $100,000 gets you maybe a dashboard or a report. In Smartsheet, $100,000 is like the largest project you'd ever do. That would be sort of everything you could possibly want. So a lot of our projects are in the either sort of $10,000 to $50,000 range. That's sort of a good rough range. A lot in the 20, 30, 40K range. And it depends exactly on what you're trying to do, and we'd have to scope it out. But certainly we're talking about an order of magnitude less than trying to do this with big COT systems, with a ServiceNow or a Workday or a Viva or an SAP. And the same is true for timeline. So in terms of timelines, you're not talking years. And this is one of the things that always happens in our industry. By the time that we actually deploy software, it's not even, solving the right problem anymore, right? The company's moved on. And so with Smartsheet, you can often get a solution out and then build on it within weeks. And that's hugely different to the traditional models of how long it takes to get something deployed. Because it's configuration of Smartsheet rather than these sort of big complicated projects. So, that whole discovery phase is like 3 or 4 meetings, right? And then the build phase is a couple of weeks. We do some testing, we do UAT, we follow a structured software development lifecycle model, but it all happens on a far more accelerated timeline than you'd see with big commercial systems. Oh, and last great question. What kind of Smartsheet tools are needed? It really depends on the solution. ClinSheets is built on Smartsheet Advanced Silver. And so that uses a lot of different tools. In particular, it uses Control Center, which is the top-down management of large number of sheets. It uses Dynamic View, which lets you do more on the UI, UX, and managing role-based access control. It has Work Apps, again, a sort of UI solution that lets you build the nice web interface, forms. And there's quite a few others like Data Shuttle or Bridge, depending if you need APIs or SFTP type integration to other pieces of software. So we'd have to talk about each one. But in general, we use quite a few of the more advanced features within the Smartsheet ecosystem to build our solutions. That said, sometimes we build solutions for clients using just the basic Smartsheet license because that's what they have and what they want to stick with. All right, great use cases. Convincing IT management to buy into enterprise apps, specifically Microsoft 365. Any advice? Yeah, that one's tough. I've been the IT guy and I've been the functional guy trying to convince people, hey, there's a better way. The best way that I've seen is take something small, do it well, and then show that as the use case, or what we call a lighthouse project. And the nice thing about Smartsheet is you can get something done for $15,000 and you can do it quickly. And then you can take that and share that and say, look, we just solved a real problem for the company and it cost us 15 grand or 25 grand. And that's a tiny fraction of what we were talking about 3 weeks ago with this other partner or other software solution. So yeah, I actually wrote a piece a little while ago called "It's Time to Bring Smartsheet in from the Cold" from an IT perspective. And unfortunately, in the past, Smartsheet was often seen as sort of an alternative to IT, like shadow IT, and IT teams didn't really embrace it. I firmly believe that IT teams should embrace it because in our industry, IT is swamped. We've got too many things to do, too many different customers within the company, all looking for solutions. And what ends up happening is IT ends up becoming basically an ineffective tool, right? Because everyone goes out and starts buying their own solutions because the IT teams can't get stuff done. So I actually firmly believe that this is a huge enabler for IT if it's done right, because you can start solving problems within the budget you have much more quickly rather than just constantly trying to delay and tell people something's coming in the future. The future, I mean, 2 years is a lifetime in our industry. So we don't get to wait 2 years to have a solution. So yeah, it's still a tough conversation. I don't think there's a single answer to that one, but I'm always happy to help there. I've been through it many times. How would you compare Smartsheet to Power Automate workflows? Yeah, you can actually do some interesting things with Power Automate. It's just not a large platform type play like Smartsheet. It's more like a specific workflow engine. So if you have something that, hey, I need to request and approve and send a notification, Power Automate would work for that. But it just doesn't have the data management backend. It doesn't have the sort of the breadth and depth that you'd get in Smartsheet, and it's not really built to be an enterprise tool. It's not scalable in the same way. It's even quicker and lighter than Smartsheet, and so in both directions, that's good and bad news. I can get something done in 30 minutes, but it's probably not scalable or a robust solution that I'd want to deploy on an enterprise level. So yeah, very small, high growth company. I need a form. Power Automate, you can build a form, but it's not going to be something you use in a bigger environment. So I'm a fan of it. I think it works well, and also I like the fact that it integrates natively with Smartsheet. So there's no real conflict there. But yeah, just lightweight. All right, we are coming up right against time. Doesn't look like there's any other questions. I just want to say thanks to everyone who joined. I get really passionate about this subject. I love working on this. I love solving problems and helping the industry scale more efficiently, bring more drugs to market, bring down that cost to bring drugs to market. So I get really excited about it, and I think Smartsheet's a fantastic solution. So thanks to everyone, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Always happy to connect. Thanks so much. Bye.